Hello, I'm Foulplay Gaming and welcome to this Achroma card game video. Today's video is another tier list video, where we look at all of the cards from the Warriors of Wishwell realm in Achroma, and we're going to look at what tier I think each card is when specifically considering deck building. You will be surprised in this video. There are some much loved characters that I've put quite low, if I'm honest, and there are some others that I actually put much higher than I expected to do. I would really be interested to see what people comment and see whether you guys think I've done any character dirty or whether there are some that should be knocked down a peg. So before we get started, just to let you know, if you want to skip to a certain part in the video, down in the description there is links to where I talk about the legendaries, rares, uncommons, and commons. If you wish to have a go at the tier list yourself, there is also a link down below. On top of that, if you wish to get 10% off your entire order at achroma.cards today, then check out the link down below and get your cards today. Let's get into it and see how this tier list goes. Okay, so firstly, to explain the tier list functionality, this is the same as my other tier list videos. So anything I put in S tier, I am considering absolutely critical to deck building. If you have this card and you can afford to put it in your deck within the rules, put it in your deck. You would be silly not to. It's like S for silly if you don't put it in tier. A tier are cards that are very, very, very good by themselves. So they're not S tier, but they're very, very good and they don't rely on other cards to be good. B tier is then still very good cards, but they rely on other cards to work. So this is where they are good cards, but you have to have something else already out in play or have another card in your hand, otherwise it's not very good. C tier is just kind of cards in the middle, as it were. They're not good, they're not bad, they do their job occasionally. D tier are cards that are quite bad, or they're not great cards, and they rely on something else. So they're really cards that you don't really want to put in your decks. And F tier, which I'm going to change to grey, is any cards that essentially are just, you should not put these in your deck. They won't do you any favors. They're barely even trade value. Hopefully, I won't have many cards in here. Lastly, keep in mind that I'm going to be comparing all of the cards to each other. However, I'm still going to be comparing them based on their rarities. So I'm going to be grading all the legendaries together, then all the rares, then all the uncommons, then all the commons. So what this means is you may see me put a legendary as low as B tier, and then later on I might put a common in S tier. I'm not necessarily saying the common is better than the legendary, but I'm just saying in deck building that you're going to be putting the ones in S tier in higher than B. Anyway, let's get started. So starting with the legendaries, Chieftain Snorre. He is a 5-cost legendary, -2 with Rage. And on top of that, all characters on your canvas get protection during their first attack each turn. Personally, I'm putting him into S tier. For an Achroma legendary, it's that second ability that characters on your canvas get protection during their first attack and they get Rage. This essentially means that whilst he's on your canvas, any other characters that you play can attack, no matter what's on the other side. It completely changes your attack phase. It's just super powerful. If you're doing a deck which is all about, having strong characters on the board, this is just so powerful. Absolutely S tier for legendary. So the next legendary is Chiefess Astrid of Lakringi. She costs 5 to play. She gives Shield Wall 2 and +2 for each holder troll on your canvas. I think I'm also going to put her in S tier. Although the Shield Wall 2 isn't as good as protection on the first attack, Shield Walls 2 does still deter people from attacking you, and +2 for each holder troll on your canvas is very strong when you consider that there is about, I think there's 7 or 8 holder trolls that you can have, and obviously when you include duplicates that you could have in your deck, you could have about 12 to 15 holder trolls, I believe, in your deck, which then does become very viable for deck building. So yeah, S tier for her as well. Then we have Gazelle, if that's how you say her name correctly. I still haven't been corrected on that. So she costs 6. If you have 3 or more trolls on your canvas, Gazelle cannot be erased. Also, during your resolve step, +4 and draw a card. Maybe I'm just really, maybe all of these are strong, but genuinely, she is just as good of a pick as the other legendaries. She is a little, you know what, I'm gonna go A tier. I'm gonna go A tier, because at least with Snorre and Astrid, you don't have to really have much else out to be useful. Like, Chieftain Snorre still has Rage and Protection. Chieftain Astrid still has Shield Wall for herself. Whereas Gazelle, so she only gets her ability if you have 3 or more trolls out. If you do not have 2 trolls out alongside her to be the third, you do not get the +4, you do not get the draw a card, and you do not get the ability she can't be erased. So therefore, you know what? No, that's B tier. No, that's B tier. Because, you know, going back to what I said at the start, B tier is cards that are good, but they rely on other cards to be good. So, yeah, because the fact she relies on you having to have 2 other trolls out, otherwise she's, I wouldn't say useless without it, it's just that she's just a 6-cost character at that stage. So we then have Norso Totem, which is a 6-cost location. It gives you block 3, and whenever a card is erased from your canvas, trade it instead. This is absolutely S tier. If I could do S++ or whatever, I probably would put it in there. It's such a good legendary. To be very clear, it block 3. You know, in most games you're going to have some form of steal or minus, so having 3 block is fantastic. But the ability, when a card is erased from your canvas, trade it instead, means that when this is out, your opponent is forced to stop attacking you unless they want to give you more shards. And what's even better is we have had it confirmed with the creators that if they then erase Norso Totem using, let's say, Fireball, it does pay the shards back. So although Norso Totem costs 6 shards to play, you will get those shards back when it gets erased. So it just becomes like a free card. It's just brilliant. Absolutely S tier. Next we have Solveig, who is quite similar to Gazelle, where if you have 3 or more trolls in your canvas, he cannot be erased, and also you steal 2 and draw a card. I'm also going to put him in B tier for the same reason, that he is very powerful. You know, if you have those trolls out, that's incredible. But as soon as you don't have 3 trolls out, he is then basically just a 6-cost character with no resolve. And keep in mind that with both Solveig and Gazelle, they don't give any protection to the other characters. So if one of the other trolls you have out only has like 1 health, like Lakrungi Trader, for example, it's so easy just to attack that trader, and suddenly their legendaries are now not as good. And then the last legendary is Thorstein, the Mighty. He costs 6. He gives +1 for each character and location on your canvas. And if you have 3 or more characters on your canvas, he can't be erased. So I'm going to put him up into S tier. He's kind of like the advanced version of these two. You know, the fact that he gets +1 for each character and location on your canvas, you know, that's going to stack up quite nicely. And if you do happen to have 3 or more characters on the canvas, you can't be erased. So, you know, it's almost like a bonus rather than a necessity. So there we go. That's what I think of the legendaries. So moving on to the rares then, the first one we have is Briscavi Falls. It is a location. It is steal 3. Sorry, it costs 3. It's steal 2. As an action, you can dig for a character. And once per turn, you can erase a location with a shard value of up to X. And X is the number of smear trolls on your canvas. Now, I'm putting this right into S tier. It's right into S tier. The fact that it costs 3 and is steal 2 is already massive. You know, most locations with steal don't pay themselves back that quickly. That's a very cheap location for steal 2 compared to other realms. And the fact you get to dig for a character, which means that if you play this later in the game, you can get back your legendaries. And then it has an extra ability, the bottom one. Now, admittedly, that bottom ability is only good if you're actually playing a deck that has Samir trolls in, but even still, even if you take away that bottom ability, I still think it's S tier. It's just absolutely brilliant. The next one is Brynhild of Briscavi. She is a really cool character, and again, I'm actually going to put her into S tier as a rare, because to only cost 3 to get steal 2, if you compare these cards to other realms, most realms, if you want a card that's going to steal 2, it's going to cost you 4 or 5 or 6. So this is an incredibly cheap steal 2. On top of that, all of your characters get rage. Not just other Samir trolls, just any character gets rage. That is huge. Going in S tier in my opinion. We then have Gunnar of Briscavi. So he is a very, very cool rare. Now, I don't really want to do this, but I'm going to put him into B tier. In his actual starter deck, the one that he comes in, it's actually like one of the top tier cards, like for the starter deck. But when deck building, he's going in B tier. And the reason for it is because, you know, as you can see, his resolve only comes around you actually having other cards out. You can either gain +1 for each card on your canvas with any teal, or you can -1 for any card with any Achroma. So if you have no other cards out, he's either a +1 or a -1, which actually for 4 costs is that's not very good at all. He can be fantastic, but he does rely on having other cards out. Next then is Hulda Tailwhip. This is absolutely going into S tier. We love control cards. This is erase a character and location from any canvas and gain the shards from one of them. So, to have a board clear where you can get rid of a character and location, and it's from any canvas, not necessarily the same one, is top tier. But if you then look at the fact that you can then gain the shards from one of them, if you manage to destroy one of, someone's legendary, that card basically pays for itself. Absolutely S tier. Then we have Canute. Now, this one he is like the fun Guar of this realm. He is loved. Now, obviously, yes, folks, I would put him in S++++ if I could, but we don't have that. And as this is, for the most part, a serious video about deck building, I want to make sure I put him in his proper place. So he is a 3-cost character with block 2, and his ability is whenever you trade, you get to draw a card. So this is a really solid ability. It could work in any deck, so therefore I'm going to put him into A tier. He's not amazing, he's not S tier, but the fact that you're getting 2 block for 3 cost isn't that bad. But the fact that whenever you trade, you can draw a card just means that it gives you so much more functionality in your deck to be able to whittle out bad cards that you may not want at this time, to be able to kind of draw through quite quickly. So A tier, I like him. Next, we have Legendries Gardens. It costs 5, and it is a +3 in the resolve. As an action, you can draw a card for each location on your canvas. If Legendries is on your canvas, draw 2 cards instead. I'm going to put this... I really want to put this in A tier, because it is a very, very good card. But the issue is, let's say that you didn't have any other locations on your canvas at this time, nor did you have Leaf of Legendries. If you played that by itself, it's a 5 cost for +3. That's quite expensive for a +3 location. So therefore, I'm going to put it into B tier, because it is very, very good, but you really need to have either other locations out first, or have Leaf out to make it worth it. We then obviously have Leaf of Legendries. So he is a 3-cost character. He gives you +1 for each of your locations, and if you have Legendries Garden, it's +2 instead. He also gives you a standard +1. Now, I'm going to probably put him into A tier, because the reason why I'm putting him into A tier is, with Legendries Gardens, it is an action, meaning you have to make sure you play Legendries after you've already got locations out. Whereas what's nice about Leaf is it's a permanent effect, meaning that you could play Leaf of Legendries on your first turn. You won't get very much on your first turn, you'll only get +1. On the next turn, if you play out Legendries Gardens, for example, you're now going to be getting +2 for every location. So Leaf is a very good card on his own, and he only gets stronger when you play more cards. So therefore, I'm going to put him in A tier. We then have an action of Samir Smash. So this is a 5-cost action, and it erases all cards on all other canvases with a shard value of 4 or less. That absolutely has to go into S tier. This is arguably one of the most powerful cards I've seen in Achroma. The only thing I can really compare it to is Chromatic Extinction from Siege of Draco Temple. And even that card, that costs quite similar shards to erase all cards from all canvases. To erase cards. But Chromatic Extinction only erases characters or locations, and it erases your own. Whereas Samir Smash, it erases everything that costs 4 or less. So realistically, it's only really legendaries and rares that stay, legendaries that stay alive, really. And it doesn't even affect your canvas. It only affects others. It has to be S tier. That's just incredible. We then have Civ of Legendries. She is a 4-cost holder troll. She gives Shield Wall 2 to all characters on your canvas, and she gains based on how many Shield Wall you have. So even with just her out alone, you would gain 2 Shield Wall. So therefore, you'd have 2 in the game. But even just by having a couple more Shield Wall out, she's going to be quite good. So I'm going to put her in A tier. By herself, she is very, very strong. But as soon as you have, she could potentially be S tier, but only if you had other holder trolls out. Next is an object of power, Tornstein's Gauntlet. This absolutely is going into S tier as well. It only costs 3. It gives you +1 for each character and location on your canvas. So that can stack up, that's a very powerful object. You don't really get objects of power that have those sort of if you have this on your canvas deal. And on top of that, that would already potentially be S tier if it was just that. But it also can only be erased if the attached character is erased. That makes it the strongest object of power in Achroma, in my opinion. It just has to be. The fact that you can't get rid of it until you erase the character just makes it so strong. S tier, all the way. We then have Trade Embargo. It's a 5-cost action. Other players cannot draw cards or trade until your next turn. Personally, I'm putting it down in C tier. You know what? I might even go D tier. Okay, you guys in the video, feel free to comment or let me know what you think, but I am going to go D tier, and here's why. Stopping players from drawing or trading is quite a cool thing, but most of the time, the people that you're playing against will already have, 2 to 5 cards in their hand, and they might not need to draw or trade to actually still have a really good turn. They might still have a decent amount of shards in their bank. They might still have cards they want to play. So although it's an inconvenience, it's not necessarily game-changing. If you play, don't get me wrong, if you played this at the right time, yes, you could stop somebody from winning. But it's very, very situational. And it only really is good in a multiplayer game. In a single-player game, it's not going to be as much value. I just think it's so situational that so far, in every game of Warriors of Wishwell I've played, I've never seen it played. I've only ever seen it traded. That I feel like that's its only real value, but maybe that's just too very strong opinion. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you think I'm wrong there. And then lastly for the rares is Wishwell Market Stall. This is a 3-cost location that whenever somebody deploys a card, you immediately +1. This is going into A tier. I wouldn't say S tier because people can easily play around it. But the fact is that you play it down, choose a player. If that player then double trades or double draws on their next turn, then obviously that's going to be good. It's going to give you a couple of shards back. But realistically, it's going to take you a couple of turns to get the shards back. It's a very good card though. It's going in A tier because it works well by itself. It doesn't rely on other cards. But it's not the best. It's not S tier because it can be easily countered or just avoided. So there we go. That is the rares. Moving swiftly on to the uncommons and commons then. I will try and go through these ones a bit quicker so this video isn't overly long. So Briscavi Rage, cost 3, characters on your canvas can attack locations this turn. That is absolutely S tier. It's the only card in Achroma that allows you to attack locations. It's just incredible. Imbued in the Forges, costs 4. It allows you to deploy an object of power for free, and then you can gain +2 for each object of power in your canvas. I'm going to put that to B tier, as it is a very good card, but it relies on two things. Well, a few things. You need to have an object of power in your hand to be able to deploy it for free. Realistically, you need to have another object of power already out for it to pay for itself. Or you need to have some expensive objects actually in your deck in the first place. So yeah, B tier. It's good, but very situational. You know what? C tier for that reason, actually. There's so many things that make it work. Lekringi Way. It is a 3-cost action. You can erase one character with any Achroma and a location with any Achroma from a canvas. It is very, very good. I'm going to put it into A tier. Fantastic card for 3-cost. Only reason it's not an S tier is because it has to be against an Achroma location, an Achroma character, which isn't always going to be the case. Next is Trader's Lifeline. Until your next turn, whenever you trade, draw a card, and you may trade when you deploy this card. That is going into S tier. It is quite literally a lifeline. I've played 2 or 3 games of it so far, and it has always saved the day. The fact is, you play that before your first draw or trade step. You then trade. You can then trade in your first draw or trade step, and trade at the end. So you're doing, just by that card alone, you're getting 3 trades in one turn, and still getting to draw 3 cards. So you're not actually losing any card draw, but you're gaining loads of shards and still having those cards. It's just absolutely brilliant. It's a great lifeline, and it only costs 2. And then the last card for the uncommon actions is Unfair Trade. Each other player must trade, you then gain the shards instead. I'm going to be putting this into B tier. It is very, very good. Actually no. I'm going to go A tier, because if you're in a single player game, just by itself, it is still very good. Because even if it's a 1-player game, it's forcing the other player to get rid of 1 card, and that is always going to be beneficial to you. You might get unlucky that a card they discard might just have 1 shard value, so you might be losing a little bit. But even then, you're still getting rid of a card. But in its better stages, you might be forcing them to get rid of a really good card, and in a 5 or 6-player game, you are gaining a lot of shards from that. So yeah, that's going A tier. So then for the uncommon characters, we have Briscavi Berserker. He is a cost 2, steal 1, and he has rage. He is going to go into... I'm going to put him into C tier. Don't get me wrong. 2 cost for 1 steal isn't bad at all. What I don't really like about him is, he's kind of, yeah, so-so, is it's all well and good having rage, but it means that unless you're, even if you're only killing 2 characters with 1 shard, 2 cave snails, for example, you're still essentially gonna erase your own card by using the rage. So unless you have an object of power on him, or unless he has protection from Chief Snorre, for example, the only way that you can actually use his rage is if you're deleting him by doing the attack, which isn't really too intuitive, unless, you're in a dire attempt. So yeah, not really a big fan. Boscavi Raider, though, is a slightly different. Boscavi Raider is 3 cost, also has rage, and whenever you attack, draw a card. He goes to A tier, though, in my opinion, because he has that extra shard, which means that he's actually more viable to use rage. And whenever he attacks, draw a card, so he's got some really good utility. So even actually, even if you are going to be kind of suiciding Boscavi Raider to kill 2 characters, at least you're getting 2 cards out of it, which is much more value. Next is Eric of Lakringi. 4 cost, action, find an object of power, then dig for an object of power. I'm putting him into B tier. No, I'm going to go C tier, actually, because it's too reliant on other things. Yes, it is great that you can get 2 objects of power into your hand, but that relies on you still having an object of power in your deck. You must still have an object of power in your dregs, meaning you've already lost one. And on top of that, he doesn't give you anything in the resolve. 4 cost is quite a lot just to kind of pick up 2 cards if you have them. Next is Giant Centipede. It is a cost 4, plus 3. You cannot deploy characters whilst Giant Centipede is on your canvas. I'm gonna put it into C tier. Actually, you know what? I'm going D tier. No, C tier. And here's why C tier. Don't get me wrong, that is quite a strong character for 3 cost. But the issue you're going to have is when you are deck building within this realm, if you actually look at all of the legendaries, apart from maybe Norso Totem, all of the other legendaries, really, the whole point of them is you want to have lots of characters out. Astrid, Snorre, Torstein, Solveig, and Gazelle all require you to have many characters out on the board. If you have Giant Centipede out, you now can't deploy those other characters, and therefore you're now going to be in a situation where you can't use your card's best abilities. And there is very little way for you to remove cards from your canvas, because if your opponent now doesn't play very many characters out, you're not going to be able to get rid of your Giant Centipede by attacking, and now you can't play your cards. It's good, but it's also bad at the same time. If there was more ways to maybe, erase your, almost like sacrifice your own characters, then sure. But otherwise, nah, C tier for me. We then have Glass Eel, 1 cost character with a steal 1, and when Glass Eel damages a character, that character cannot attack this turn or next turn. That's going into S tier. 1 cost to steal 1. Even if you do nothing else of that character, but just place it out to get a free steal, that's a free card and you're minusing it from someone else. That is insane. On top of that, if you attack someone with it or someone attacks you, that character cannot attack until its next turn. That completely negates rage, which is just really, really powerful. And then lastly, Magnus of Lakringi, 4 cost, plus 2 dig for a character. I'm going to put him into B tier. It is quite expensive. Plus 2 though, so in a couple of turns you'll get that back. And the fact you can dig for a character is quite good, but it does rely on you actually having a character you wish to dig for down there. So yeah, B tier will be fine. Then for uncommon locations, we have Boscavi Cave Dwelling, cost 3, steal 1, find a Samir Troll with shard value 4 or less. That's going into A tier in my opinion. I guess maybe B tier because... Yeah, I'm going to go B tier because, again, as much as it is a very good card, I can't stress enough that in the games that I've played, this has become so handy because you could play that to then find something like your Gunnar of Boscavi. But the reason it's going into B tier is it does still rely on you having a troll in your deck with 4 or less. If you don't have any trolls left, or the trolls you have left are quite insignificant trolls, you're not going to get that much value out of it. And it's only steal 1, so it's going to take 3 turns to replace it. So for that reason, B tier. Same thing then for Lakringi Cliff Dwelling. It's exactly the same as the one we just saw, but it's just for Holder Trolls rather than Smear Trolls. So therefore, it's going into B tier. And on top of that, actually, when you actually look at these cards, it is being specific, Holder Troll or Smear Troll. So if you try to deck build and you mix and match the trolls, these cards aren't going to benefit each other. We then have Legendries Forge. It is a +2, 4-cost card, object to find and object to power. It's literally in the same sort of remit as Cave Dwelling and Cliff Dwelling. It's just that find an object of power instead. And I'm putting it in B tier for the same reason that, you know, it still relies on you actually having an object of power left in your deck. And on top of that, it still takes more than 2 turns to repay itself, so B tier. And then you have Wishwell Storehole. It costs 3. Choose a player. Whenever this card is deployed, whenever they draw a card, you immediately +1. Where did I put Wishwell Market? Because obviously the rare Wishwell Market, it's Market Stall. It's kind of similar to this one. Market Stall is whenever they deploy a card, whereas this one is whenever they draw a card. I'm going to put this one into, yeah, the same tier. It's going to go into A tier for the same reason that one was. Then we have Objects of Power. So we have Bruscavi Fishing Spear, 2 cost, -1, attached character gets Rage. Yeah, I'm going to put that into A tier. It's a solid Object of Power. Yeah, it's a solid power. I like it. You then have Bruscavi Snare. I'm going to put this one actually genuinely down into F tier. You know what? No, C tier. Maybe I judged it too quickly. So this is when an attached character damages a character, the damaged character cannot attack this turn or next turn. So it has the same ability as Eel, but the reason I'm putting it into C tier is because it doesn't give you anything back in return. There's no, you know, real benefit. You know, that's 3 cost is quite a lot to get nothing back. The only reason I've not put it in F tier is because a 3-cost object of power attached to, let's say, you know, a 4 or 5 cost character will make them incredibly difficult to get rid of. So for that reason, it's going to D tier, but I'm not really a massive fan of that ability. Yeah, it could be useful. You know, it means that character then can't attack on its next turn. But yeah, it's C tier. It's a bit wishy-washy for me. Let me know if you... I'm a bit conflicted on this one. Let me know if you think I've judged that too harshly. And then the last one is Legendries Catapult. So this is a 2-cost +1 object of power. Action, drain 2 shards from any card. Personally, I'm putting that, I guess, A tier. I'll go A tier rather than... I was close to go S tier. +1 on a 2-cost object of power is lovely. The fact you can drain 2 cards from any card, you know, it's one of the first times we've seen, like, proper card removal on a object of power, you know, like when you deploy it. Yeah, that could come really, really in handy. So yeah, A tier. So now we move on to the uncommons. So starting with the uncommon actions, we have Bruscavi Negotiation. Swap a location on your canvas with a location on another canvas. Now, when I first saw this card, I thought it was really, really good. I guess I'm going to go B tier, actually, not C tier. I was thinking this was going to be like OP. But the reason why it's not very powerful is when you actually look at the locations in this realm, most of the locations you're playing are going to cost you 3 or 4 shards. There's not actually that many that are cheap. And the ones that are cheap, you actually don't really want to get rid of. Like, for example, these ones will come on to later. The point I'm trying to make is, for Bruscavi Negotiation, where you are literally trading a location, for that to be relative, you know, into A tier, you would need to have locations that you're willing to give away. You know, you need to have really bad locations that you don't mind swapping. But actually, when you look at it, all of the locations we're about to look at are actually quite good locations that you don't really want to swap. The only one that you might swap is Bruscavi Shore, that we'll come on to in a bit, that's a -1. So yeah, for that reason, I'm putting it into B tier, because yeah, it could get you some good value if you're swapping it for like a Norso Totem, for example. But it is it's so unlikely that you're going to have a bad location on your canvas and they're going to have a, you know, S tier, A tier. So for that reason, I'm putting it in B. Next is Bruscavi Totem Worship. +2 for each Smeartron on your canvas. If the totem is on your canvas, +3 instead. I'm putting this into C tier because it's so dependent. You know, the chances... This is only value. The only time this is actually going to work out well for you is if you have two or more trolls out. You know, if you did have 2 trolls out, all that's going to do is give you +1. So really, you need to have 3 trolls out to be able to get +2. Or you need to have Samir Totem on your canvas to gain +3 instead. It's so dependent. Essentially, that card is only good if you have 2 trolls and the totem out at the same time. Otherwise, you're maybe gaining 1 or 2 shards maximum. It can be good, but for the most of the time, you're probably going to end up trading it unless you happen to get it at a lucky stage. We then have Dark Waters. Costs 1, give a character rage this turn. Yeah, I'm going to put that into S tier. Considering it literally only costs 1, and you could then do it for any of your strong characters, it's such a great way of, deciding when you want to do a double attack. Lekringi Worship Totem is exactly the same as Briscavi Totem Worship, so therefore I'm going to put it into C tier. And then you have Aurium Twine, which is a 1-cost card. Dig for a card with a value of 4 or less, and immediately trade it. I'm going to put that into B tier. It is very good action, but again, it is quite reliant. You would need to have at least, you need to have cards in your dregs. So, this is terrible at the start of the game, unless you're going to trade something straight away. And plus, most of the time, if you don't have something in your dregs that's 4 shards, let's say you only had 3 shards was the best card, then when you play this, you're only going to be getting a net gain of 2 shards. So to get the most out of this card, you need to have something with at least 4 shards in your dregs, which is not always likely. So for that reason, B tier. Can be good, but reliant on other things. Falling Stalactite, erase a character with a shard value of 4 or more. I'm also putting it into B tier because I'll go A tier because 3 cost to get rid of like a legendary or a rare is quite good. It's not S tier because of that limit of it has to be 4 or more. It's not just like erase a character. We then have Icy Waters, 2 cost, choose a character, they cannot attack till your next turn. That is also going into A tier. The fact that you could, this gives you the opportunity to play a character that maybe isn't very good this turn, play Icy Waters on, let's say, the legendary on the other side so that they can't then attack your worst character. And that gives you an extra turn to be able to maybe then next turn give it an object of power. So yeah, Icy Waters, A tier, it only costs 2. It's a really good way of getting characters out when you're maybe character locked due to them having good characters. So then we come on to uncommon characters. So we start with Briscavi Hunter. He costs 3, -1, and he has Rage. I'm going to put him into C tier for the same sort of reason that I put in Berserker. He's not as good as... Actually, I'm going to put him in B tier. Because when I compare him to Berserker and Raider, Berserker is 2 cost with a steal, and that's the one where I said that, when you do your rage, he's just going to die. I put Raider into A tier because of that ability of drawing a card when you double attack. Briscavi Hunter doesn't have that ability, but at least he does have a -1. So he's a little bit better than Briscavi Berserker, but he's not as good as Briscavi Raider. So that's why I'm putting him in B. We then have Briscavi Thrall, a 1 to -1. Yeah, you can go C tier. Spend 1 to -1, no issue with that, but otherwise he gives you no real other value. He doesn't give you any value really to some of the legendaries apart from maybe Torstein. So yeah, he's not amazing, he's not terrible, he does his job. Cave Salamander, I'm probably going to put him in the same boat as Thrall, but maybe even D tier to be honest. Spending 2, yeah, I'm going to put D tier. Spending 2 to only gain +1 means that it's going to take you a couple of turns to get any value out of him. Being a creature and not a troll means that he doesn't really vibe or synergize with many other cards other than maybe Torstein. And you're not going to get that much attack value out of him either. So far, I'm not really a big fan of Salamander. Cave Snail, I'm going to be a bit kinder to. He can go into C tier, just purely because he only costs 1 to get 1 block. Actually, no, I'm going D tier because the chances are that if your opponent has if your opponent is stealing or minusing from you, it's probably from characters, it's not always locations. And it is so easy for your opponent just to kill that cave snail before their resolve step, and then they can steal from you. So for that reason, I might even go F tier for snail. Oh, I feel bad putting F tier. No, I'm going to go D tier. It's not great, and it's only not great if other things aren't on the board. Essentially, it's only good if your opponent doesn't have characters out. Then we have Cave Spider. Now, in contrast, Cave Spider is going right up into S tier. A 1-cost poisonous card is so good because you can play Cave Spider, and because it's poisonous, meaning it will kill any character that it attacks, the only way your opponent can counter Cave Spider is if they have an action to erase a character, which arguably might be considered a waste to use it on the spider rather than like a legendary, or they attach an object of power to their character first. But even still, they're then going to lose the object of power. It's just such a big presence on the board to have that poisonous for only 1 cost, even if it gives nothing back in the resolve. Next is Lekringi Miner. He costs 2, +2, and the shard value of objects of power whilst in player's hand is reduced by 1. I'm putting him into A tier. a card that literally pays for themselves on the first turn is brilliant. They also have a really cool ability. Yeah, A. The only reason it's not S tier is that because it does rely on you having Object of Power in your hand to make that ability worth it. And also it does also give the shard value reduction to your opponents, which might not be what you want. Next is Lekringi Shield Maiden. She costs 2 and gives Shield Wall 1 as +1. She's also going into A tier. She is effectively, even by herself, she is a 2 character, but she is 3 strength when being attacked and a +1. So yeah, she's solid by herself and even better with other people around her. We then have Lekringi Trader. So cost 1, action, you may trade. I'm going to put this in C tier. He's not the best. Spending 1 to trade is all well and good, but that might be able to get you out of a tricky situation where you really, really need to do an extra trade to get some more shards. But realistically, and don't get me wrong, that can synergize really well with cards like Trader's Lifeline, or maybe the one where every time you trade, you can draw a card like Canute. So, if you pair him with like a cards like that, sure, he's going to be good. But in an average deck, if you are forcing yourself to trade, if you've built a custom deck, you've probably built a custom deck, unless it's a trader deck specifically, you've built that deck with really good cards. Theoretically, you don't want to trade at all. So yeah, I'm just not a big fan of this card. In fact, you know what? I'm going D tier. He's C tier. He's only good if you can pair him in a trader deck. Otherwise, in my opinion, useless. And then lastly, Velvet Worm, 2-cost character with 2 block. It's kind of similar to the Cave Snail. I'm going to go C tier just purely because at least with 2 shards, he's a little bit harder to kill and 2 block is a little bit better, but still not great because he can still be killed easily before the next resolve step. Then we come on to the common locations. Briscavi Shore, 1 cost, 1 minus. I'm going to put it in C tier. It's not terrible to get 1 cost to get 1 minus. Actually, no, I'm just going to go into A tier because locations are much harder to be destroyed. So 1 cost for 1 minus is actually pretty solid. And that's the only location I can see working well for Briscavi Negotiation. We then have a Briscavi Samir Totem. It is 3 cost and you get to steal based on the number of trolls on your canvas. That's going into B tier. It is a very, very good location, but it's very reliant on you having Samir trolls on your canvas and in your deck. You know what? Same thing for the Holder Totem. It's going into B tier for the same reason, is it's very reliant on having Holder trolls on your canvas. Obviously, they work very well with the Worship cards as well. I then want to talk about Fishing Dock. So this is one that might split the room. It costs 2. Once per turn, look at the top 2 cards of your palette, trade one of them, put the other to the bottom of your palette. I'm putting it down into D tier. The reason why is it in the best case scenario, if you're playing a trader deck, then that is going to... Oh, sorry, wrong thing. If you're playing a trader deck, then that is going to be able to allow you to do an extra trade every turn. So, if you start pairing... Yeah, if you pair it with other cards that give you benefits when you trade, again, like Canute, for example, then sure, that might be quite useful. But what I've seen so far in people's use cases for Fishing Dock is most of the time, what happens is the two cards you draw end up being cards you want, and now you're being forced to trade one of them, which means you now can't use it, and the other one is going to the bottom of your canvas, bottom of your palette, which you now can't use until it comes back around again. And you have to do it every turn. It's not a choice. It's once per turn. Not once per turn you may do this. It's once per turn you have to. It's such a gamble. And once it's on your canvas, if you decide, oh man, I actually haven't got very many cards left, I don't want to deck out, I don't want to do that, tough luck, it's on your canvas. Unless you can remove it, or maybe, I guess you could place that and then do Briscavi Negotiation to put it on your opponent's side. But yeah, in my opinion, it's just not very good. Next then is Lekringi Mines. It is a 2-cost location to give you +2. That's going straight into A tier, a card that literally pays for itself and then some. Yeah, very, very happy. You know what? I might even put that in S tier. I haven't put very many locations in there. It's one of the only locations that pays for itself back. So sure, I'm putting it in S tier actually. Why not have that there? Next then is Trader's Pass. It is a block 1. Once during your turn, you may trade. And whenever you trade, you immediately +1. That's going to go into A tier. Very solid location. It gives you that option. Again, it's you may trade. You're not forced to. So once during your turn, you may trade again, and whenever you trade, gain +1. It just means that, you know, if you're trading at the start or end of your turn, normally you're going to be gaining +1, so it makes trading even better. And on top of that, you have the extra ability to trade again. It's just really, really solid. You know what? S tier. Why am I not putting that in S tier? It's a block, and it's quite a lot of gain over time, and the option to trade again. Yeah, that's definitely S tier, actually. I don't know why I put that in A tier to begin with. And then the last one I've got here is Wishwell Barons. It costs 3. It's a +1. Choose a player when this card is deployed. Whenever they trade, you immediately gain 1. I'm going to put that into A tier for the same reason I put Storehouse and Market Stall. You know, it will pay for itself back quite quickly, but it's not in your control. The reason it's not S tier is that it's not about when you trade, it's about the person you choose. Now, don't get me wrong, you could choose yourself. So whenever you trade, you gain +1. So synergize that with Trader's Pass, and you've now got +2 for every time you trade. So those two together are fantastic. But just by itself, not looking into other synergies, yeah, A tier, but just not S tier in my opinion. It's close. I'm really tempted to put that in S tier, but for now I'm going to leave it in A tier. It's very good. It's A+ if you want to put it that way. And then lastly is Aurium Drill, the uncommon object of power. +1 to gain 1. Any cards that pay for themselves, you guys know I like. So that's going to go into A tier. It's a quick object of power. Even if somebody kills it the next turn, you're still going to get value out of it. But the fact that that object of power attached to your character will protect that character from things like Cave Spider or Glass Eel just makes it really, really powerful. So yeah, I'm happy with A tier for that. And there we have my tier list for Warriors of Wishwell in the card game Achroma. Hopefully you find this useful if you're looking to deck build in this realm, as now you can see which cards you should definitely try and get into your deck and which ones you should avoid. Keep in mind this is subjective, so if you think I've done any cards dirty, or if you think there's some cards that really should be a little bit lower, then let me know in the comments, or alternatively, have a go at the tier list yourself by using the link in the description and post it on Twitter or onto the Discord so I can see what you think. If you want to see my other tier list for the other realms, the links are also below, as well as if you wish to go and buy this realm or any other cards, you can click the link down below to get 10% off your order today. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Foul Play Gaming. See you in the next one. Stay wholesome.